What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my Limstella Unit Review and Builds Guide. So Limstella is a 171 BST green infantry mage with Morph Fimbulvetr as their preferred weapon. This weapon has a really simple condition. If they are within 3 spaces of an ally, then they can inflict -8 attack and resistance debuff on the opponent during the combat, and they also get follow-up negation. And finally, they can get extra attack in combat depending on the highest total bonuses of attack and resistance of the ally within 3 spaces. So this effect is really similar to that of Ashera and her ally Blade Tome, but this is like a half ally Blade Tome because it's only going to be counting the attack and resistance buffs of the ally. And after combat, if Limstella attacked, then they're going to be dealing 15 damage to the nearest ally. This damage is reminiscent of Lif, Dual Lif, and Fallen Berkut's weapon, and it's also a reference to Limstella stealing the quintessence out of so many people, so they also do that to their allies as a penalty for getting all of these effects in their weapon. So this preferred weapon is actually pretty good because debuffing the opponent's attack and resistance by -8 is really amazing, and having follow-up denial in this weapon definitely helps them a lot as a tank with their bulk. And having the ally Blade Tome effect is really great for having much better damage output because unlike the actual Blade Tomes, the ally Blade Tome effect is not susceptible to the lull skills and the dull skills. So you can easily get extra attack on Limstella by buffing up your allies' attack and resistance, and that just makes Limstella's damage output much better than any kind of other free-to-play green mage. Unfortunately, the 15 damage to the nearest ally is going to be annoying for many people, and I'm definitely going to be talking a lot more about that. But basically, with this weapon, Limstella is able to stand out as a free-to-play unit, and their stats also complement this weapon really well because they have base 39 attack with a super boon. So Limstella's damage output is actually really good, and they also have good mixed bulk, which is kind of rare for a mage to have, this kind of defense. And because of this kind of stat spread, there's not really any kind of direct competition of Limstella in the free-to-play pool. Orochi is the closest comparison, but she doesn't really have as much defense as Limstella, and definitely not as stacked of a weapon like Morph Fimbulvetr. Orochi's damage output is not going to be as high as Limstella's because Limstella does have that ally Blade Tome effect. So all things considered, Limstella is actually a pretty unique free-to-play unit with that stat spread, having that bulk, and also this preferred weapon, which has some really good effects. As for their fodder, they do have Defense Rest Form, which could be a nice budget skill to be used, and Sabotage Attack is present at 5-star. And coming back to Morph Fimbulvetr and the 15 damage that it does, it is going to be really annoying for some players, and this goes without saying, but you can obviously use allies with Vantage, Desperation, Brazen skills, Escape Route, and all of that. But still, team building aspect is definitely important for Limstella, and I feel like because Limstella is the first free-to-play unit to do this kind of damage to their allies, I want to go over some of the good teammates that you can run with them. So Medius by far is the best ally for Limstella because of the On Guard effect, which will completely neutralize the penalty damage on the allies. So the one drawback of this weapon is completely gone if you use them with Medius. Not to mention, Medius can also provide the easy attack and resistance buff. If you have Medius, then there's no reason not to use him with Limstella. And with Aether Raids Chaos coming up, you can actually use your defensive mythics in offense. So you could actually run Limstella in Aether Raids offense with Medius and definitely function much better and tank stuff with their mixed bulk. And it's definitely something that you could try out in a couple of days when we do get that season. You can also use August and Legendary Lucina for giving the player phase follow-up attack to Limstella. And this can make Limstella into a more mixed phase unit by having quicker post for the enemy phase and then having this player phase follow-up attack. And with the Diplomacy Staff of August, you can also buff up Limstella, which is definitely really good. And Lucina can also buff up by using Attack Resistance Link with Future Vision 2. So both of these units are really good, and I personally prefer Legendary Lucina a lot more than August, who is a lot more of a passive support, and Legendary Lucina herself is a very good combat unit as well. The newest Ascended Florina that we have is also a good teammate because not only she can provide the teleportation to all of your allies, but she also appreciates the 15 damage to activate the reverse Wings of Mercy present in her weapon. You can also use Ashera with Limstella for the easy attack and resistance buff from her Slotzy skill. And Ashera can also provide Null Panic to all of your allies, so that is going to be making sure that Limstella is able to get the extra power from their weapon with that Ally Blade Tome effect. Kaden is also a pretty good partner if you're trying to run a tanky build on Limstella, because he does provide Drive Guard and can also provide extra stats to Limstella and does appreciate getting buffed up to activate his support. Again, you can use the skills which do appreciate the damage. I know it's a lot easier said than done, but still someone like Shadows of Valentia Pala, who's a really strong brave weapon user, can work with a Vantage build, will appreciate this 15 damage to fall into the Vantage range. Overall, Limstella is a unique and solid free-to-play mage with their stat spread and also their preferred weapon, which even though has a drawback, still has got a lot of stacked effects and can definitely make them into a pretty good unit, especially at high investment. They also have very high damage output because of the Ally Blade Tome effect to the attack and resistance, not to mention the very high base attack and the super boon if you do decide to use your trade fruits. And Limstella also has good mixed bulk because of the attack debuffs and also because of having the follow-up denial in their weapon. Now, some people may not want to invest into them because the 15 damage to the nearest ally can be a huge turnoff for many players, and it can also be detrimental with some strategies and in definitely some game modes. Like if you're trying to use a near safe tank with Limstella, then Limstella is constantly going to be damaging your near safe tank with the 15 damage, which could be annoying. With this kind of damage, you should definitely consider if the trade-off is good for you or not, because Duolith also has this kind of damage, and in Aether Raids defense, despite his damage, he's still a very strong unit, so his pros outweigh his cons, the con being the damage that he does to his allies. Similar is the case with Limstella, and Limstella definitely has good enough effects to be that trade-off for a lot of people, so it really depends on you as a player if you're willing to work with that trade-off and still use them despite that damage. And Limstella also has to rely on quick riposte for making doubles in the enemy phase, and obviously they cannot really double easily in player phase due to the low speed, so being a slow infantry unit is kind of suffering because your options are kind of limited. If you want to build up Limstella on a budget, then you can simply run quick riposte in the slot B, and that is always going to be helpful for tanking in the enemy phase and then double attacking. And you can also run attack resistance form to just double down on the form skill. Attack tactic could be a good option because you can buff up an ally, support them, and then also take advantage of the Ally Blade Tome effect in Morph Fimbulvetr. But if you want to invest heavily into Limstella, then I would definitely recommend having lull attack resistance, because this will stack up with the debuffs of their weapon for a total of -11 attack and resistance debuff, and that is definitely really good for the bulk and also for hitting hard. Not to mention, you're also going to be ignoring any kind of visible buffs of the opponent to their attack and resistance. You can also run Glimmer as their special because at this kind of max investment, their attack is really high, and because they have the follow-up negation effect, having a 2-turn cooldown means that you can trigger that in a single round of combat. Attack resistance unity is a really solid skill for Limstella because they do have high attack and resistance, so they could be susceptible to the debuffs of those two stats, and it's also a mixed phase skill and also needs to be near the ally, just like their weapon. So overall, it does have really good synergy and does work in both phases. And similarly, a Joint Drive skill is also really good because of its proximity. And you also can invest into Limstella with Close Reversal or Close Foil. There are not too many mages or ranged units in general who want to run this skill, but because of Limstella's good physical bulk and the fact that they have so much attack debuff on the enemy, you can definitely make use of this at max investment, and summoner support and any kind of extra stats do help with this. So if you have an extra gatekeeper, then this could be an option with Close Reversal and Joint Drive defense, and then lull attack resistance is a staple on Limstella like I said, and quick riposte is going to be helping you double in the enemy phase, so it's a really good Sacred Seal option on pretty much most of their builds. If you ascend their defense with their Floret, then they can pretty much have similar resistance and defense and have a balanced mixed bulk, which is definitely pretty fun for a free-to-play unit. If you want to run a more enemy phase oriented build, then Mirror Stance 3 is an option, and the guard effect is always going to be really helpful for a slow unit in case you face a null follow-up unit who's going to be doubling you anyways, so this could be a good option with the general build. And attack resistance gap is also a pretty nice Slotzy option that can buff up an ally to activate their Ally Blade Tome and Morph Fimbulvetr. This is present in the Divine Code section on Halloween Ileana, so it is definitely a lot easily accessible, and Mirror Stance 3 is also available in Divine Codes. Limstella can receive the dual force skill and low attack resistance from Pent and can function in Arena, but keep in mind that the 15 damage from their weapon can come to bite you back if you're not prepared for it in something like Arena. You can also run Rally Attack Resistance Plus just to have good synergy with their weapon, and because we're having so many attack debuffs, Ruptured Sky is actually going to be not having that high of a damage output because it depends on the attack stat of the enemy. So Blue Flame could be an option that you can run, and Attack Resistance Menace can give you that nice burst damage output in the player phase, and Attack Defense Form can definitely help you just boost that damage output and also tank some of the physical threats like Legendary Crom and Legendary Leaf much better. Like I said before, with Aether Raids Chaos coming up, you can try and use Limstella with Medius and also maybe a near safe tank, and any of these other builds can work for Aether Raids Chaos. But if you want to use Limstella in Aether Raids defense in the regular Aether Raids, then they could be run in the Dark Season with Brattle Catria. Like it is with any kind of slow unit, Brattle Catria can just power them up with that triangle attack, giving the Brave effect. And because Limstella's damage output is really high, you can definitely make use of this, and Medius is also going to be present right there in the Dark Season, giving the On Guard. So the drawback of their weapon is not going to be a big issue, and you can definitely hit pretty hard against Brave Hectors and Ascended Iduns. But if they're running Hardy Fighter and Deflect Magic, then even Limstella is not really going to be able to kill them or do a lot of damage. So despite the blue color of those popular far safe tanks, if they run Hardy Fighter and Deflect Magic, then it is still going to be troublesome. Attack Resistance Unity is again a pretty good option here because people do run Temari Dagger on air, and they also have Sabotage Attack Mila, so having the extra attack from the debuffs is always going to be helpful, and you can also have good synergy with the Slotsy and Sacred Seal. Make sure to share this video with your friends if they're trying to build up Limstella, because Limstella is definitely a pretty amazing free-to-play unit, and if you enjoyed, then make sure to leave a like and a comment. Helps me tremendously, and if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using Super Thanks or by becoming a YouTube member. And for more FEH videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes also steal quintessence just like Limstella. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.